There we go. Welcome, everybody. Wednesday night service. Today is January 27th, 7 days in, and it's been a wonderful week. And I'm excited as your host tonight to announce no major cataclysmic events on Wednesday night. Because we've had an impeachment, an insurrection, and an inauguration the last 3 Wednesday nights. This night, we're going to have fun. So welcome, everybody. I'm excited for our Wednesday night. As you all know, my name is Paul, and I'd like to tell you a few things at the beginning. And let me get my notes up real quick. Here we go. Hello, church family. It's so lovely to be with you tonight, and I'm so grateful that you've all chosen this Wednesday night to be with us. We have a wonderful Zoom team in the background, and we have a wonderful speaker tonight. We expect to have a fabulous service. Reverend Jeff likes our Wednesday nights to be informal, intimate, and rich, and that's exactly what it will be. I can guarantee that for sure. That is what Wednesday nights are supposed to be. So that's what we'll have. Tonight we have a wonderful speaker. She'll be speaking in the framework of our annual and monthly theme. Both are the same for the month of January and for the new year 2021, Timeless Wisdom, Evolutionary Vision. Then we have a weekly theme, and we'll let you know what that is in a little bit. That's the premise of her conversation tonight. If you're joining us for the first time, we welcome you, and we'll let you know that the Zoom team will mute your camera and your microphone to allow us to improve the quality of the transmission. So with that being said, again, I can't thank you enough for joining us. And with that in mind, I'd like to bring on Practitioner Judith Roberts and ask her if she'd open us up in prayer and then introduce our speaker.
Thank you, Paul.
Thank you.
Yeah, so join me, maybe close your eyes as we take this in. Just knowing that there's one presence, one divine mind, one spirit, that one is right here and right now, and that one indwells in each one of us. That one is all-knowing, that one is all-loving, that one is all-wise. And so as we move into this service tonight, I know that our speaker, Constance, is guided by that one. That she shares her wisdom, her deep inner wisdom, that she is imbued with the wisdom of the one, and it flows out of her to us and lifts us up and reminds us of who we are and whose we are and what we are and what we're about. Reminds us of the beauty and the goodness and the love of this life, the life that has been graciously bestowed upon each one of us. And so I know that Constance is connected and aligned with spirit, and that each one of us is informed by spirit through her. So I bless this evening and give thanks for all that we received tonight, and invite you to say with me, and so it is. Amen.
So it is.
And now I turn it over to Constance.
Well, good evening, everybody, and it's nice to be here in front of the camera instead of behind the camera for a change. And I just want to thank Robert Leeds. I don't know if he's on the call, because he set this talk up for me on Sunday when he did the announcement, and he read my title as below, so above, and he stopped and he went, I hope this isn't a typo. because, of course, the saying is as above, so below. And, of course, it wasn't a typo. It was exactly what I wanted. So let me start. I'm going to tell you a little bit. I'm going to tell you about my 50th birthday, which was just a few years ago. I won't tell you how many. But it was I was on the west coast of Vancouver Island, and for my 50th birthday, I really wanted to go to the Hot Springs Cove, which is about a 45-minute boat ride or a 15-minute float plane ride from the little town of Tofino, which is on the very west coast of Vancouver Island. And I was there with a friend of mine who was out from Toronto. She's a musician and she plays with the National Ballet Orchestra, and she had a few days off. So we took this trip, and we had bought our tickets the day before when we'd first gotten there to get in the boat tour to go up to the hot springs. So we went in the next morning to get on the boat, and we were told that it was canceled because there was a malfunction with the boat. And I was just beside myself because we couldn't get on any other boats. They all go at the same time. And it was the only day I had to go, so I just really talked, probably not in my kindest tone of voice, but I talked very, very much to the woman who was behind the counter and just told her that I really, really needed to do this. It was my only day to do it. So she made a few phone calls, and she said, well, okay, in 15 minutes, I found Blackie. Blackie will come, and he'll take you up there. Well, Blackie was a young guy. He was in his 20s. He was from the Heshquit First Nations. And so he showed up, and he had a 2-seater outboard. And it was at that time, it was a really beautiful day. It was sunny, and so we got in the outboard, and he took us up to the Hot Springs Cove. And you go through a bunch of islands, and at some point you have to go out into the open ocean, and then you get back into another inlet. So he let us off at the dock, and he said, we made arrangements. He'd be back at such and such a time to pick us up. And then what we did was we walked about a mile on a beautiful hand-hewn cedar boardwalk through the coastal rainforest to these natural hot springs, which were cascading down from a number of rocks. And so it was an absolutely gorgeous time, because of course what happened is, because the boat couldn't go on time, we were there alone. Otherwise it would have been filled with people. So we were there, just the two of us, and I'm not quite, well, I'll just be honest. My friend is very much into weed, and so we didn't have suits on, but we also didn't have, we weren't totally in our right minds. But it was totally gorgeous. It was wonderful. It was a very mystical experience for me. The rocks were talking to me. And at one point I leaned back and I looked up, and I could see up above me these huge black clouds coming in really fast like this. And and I know that on the west coast that means there's a storm, a big one. And so I lay back there and I sort of thought, can I still believe in conspiracy theories and the benevolence of the universe? And I decided that I could. So I was just totally blissed out. We got up. We walked back up to the boardwalk. We met Blackie at the dock. He had arranged, at that time the rain was pelting down. He had arranged the boat so that we could, all of us, get underneath the little bit of shelter that there was, and we headed out. And there were a lot of big waves. And we had to go out into the big ocean at one point, and those waves were quite large. I was never worried. I was totally knew that the universe was supporting me and that we were fine. My friend was not so much. She was really freaked out. Anyway, but we got there. We got back to our campground. The tent had blown down. We put the tent back up, and life went on. And it was a beautiful, beautiful experience. So then 10 years ago, when I was studying women's spirituality, one of my teachers in a class said paradox is where God lives. And so that experience I'd had at Hot Springs Cove had been confronting a paradox. And here she was saying that paradox was where God lived. And so that's always, it's come back to me every once in a while. And then about a month ago, I read an article on the forest, which I'll tell you about in a bit. And the first time I read it, I thought, oh yeah, well this is just, science is finally catching up to what we already know. And then on the second read, I realized that there was something much deeper going on here, which was that there was a real paradox. And that was what was really exciting to me. So what is a paradox? It's a situation where two facts and situations seem opposite or contradictory. And a link between them can seem absurd, yet both can be true at the same time, or at least partially so. So Barbara, can you bring up that first slide? So this is an example of paradox that I found on Facebook. So the first one is Frida Kahlo. It's be strong when you are weak. Then Maya Angelou, be brave when you are scared. Then Amelia Earhart, be humble when you are victorious. So those are paradoxes. So then I went to Ernest Holmes, and I couldn't find anything about paradox. So I went and looked at what the synonyms for paradox were, and one of them was mystery. And so here's what one of the things he has to say about mystery. A mystic is not a mysterious person, but one who has a deep inner sense of unity and the whole. Mysticism and mystery are entirely different things. One is real while the other may or may not be an illusion. There is nothing mysterious in the truth so far as it is understood. But all things, of course, are mysteries until we understand them. In the Tao, the second verse of the Tao is the whole verse is on paradox. I'm just going to read you the one sentence right now. The sage lives openly with apparent duality and paradoxical unity. And the Buddhists also acknowledge that one of their main tenets is that, this is simplified, suffering can only be ended by no longer trying to end suffering. And there's many, many Christian examples in the Bible. Barbara, if you can bring up that next slide. The first one is exaltation through humility. So here you see at the Spiritual Olympics, Molly won the gold medal for humility, but immediately had to forfeit it when she stepped onto the highest podium. Thank you. And then strength through weakness, which we already saw in that other one. So it got me thinking about really what is the function and the purpose of paradox, and how do we negotiate it? So I'm just going to let that sit for a bit while I tell you about this research that got me thinking about this. It was about the social life of forests. You may have seen it because it circulated on Facebook when I put it up there. So Dr. Suzanne Simard is a professor of forestry at the University of British Columbia in Vancouver, my hometown, where I formerly lived. And her grandfather and her uncles used to do selective logging using horses. And so she grew up in the forest, and she never really noticed any difference after they had logged because of the way they did it. It didn't impact the forest very much. So by the time she went to graduate school, clear cutting had replaced selective logging. The belief was that by taking all the trees, the ones that were planted, to replace them wouldn't have any competition for resources and would grow faster. And yet what she noticed was that up to 10% of the newly planted Douglas fir were likely to get sick and die whenever nearby aspen, paper birch, and cottonwood were removed. So this really piqued her curiosity, and she suspected that the answer was in the soil. So she went underground. And so what she found was that underground, trees and fungi form partnerships known as mycorrhizae. And those are thread-like fungi envelopes, that fuse with the tree roots, and they help them extract water and nutrients. Yes, and that's what the mycorrhiza looks like on the left. And then the mushrooms and the conchs are the fruiting body, so that's what you see above. And then, Barbara, just do the next slide real quick. And then this whole network is supporting this. So research had previously demonstrated that these mycorrhizas connect plants to one another, and they knew that, but they had only done research in greenhouses and laboratories, not in the wild. Well, what Dr. Samard decided to do was investigate the fungal links between Douglas fir and birch in the forests of British Columbia. And that was for her PhD research. She didn't, except from her supervisor, she didn't receive much encouragement from her mostly male peers, because at that time everyone was studying growth and yield. And how she wanted to study how the plants interacted, and her male peers thought it was all pretty girly. So she's been pursuing this research for 30 plus years now. And that she has found that the fungal threads connect almost every living tree in a forest, even those of different species. And furthermore, the resources tend to flow from the oldest and the biggest to the youngest and the smallest. And I found that fascinating, because when I lived in British Columbia, I would drive by clear cuts all the time, and it just I would just always pray, because it just felt so wrong. And I always felt, when I could see the plantations, which is what they called them, of all these little trees about the same height, all the same, I always felt like they were orphans. And her research is saying, in fact, they are. And so this research confirms for the forest what it is that we believe, that we are all connected. So what I've found, because we're all human, is that often when we find something that confirms what we already believe, we just go, yes, yes, and we stop. And we don't go any further. Well, I kept reading and found that what was really juicy about her work is that the paradox it created concerning Darwin's theory of evolution. And as you probably know, that theory has as its tenet that competition and selection are what move evolution forward. And here she was saying that trees cooperated with each other and with fungi so that they all prospered. Well, of course, this created a furor in the academic community. And so other researchers decided they better double check and make sure that it's like, okay, we need to find competition, because we know that competition is what works. So you know, as we know, they believed in competition, so they looked, and guess what they found? They found evidence to support that there's competition as well. So one researcher found that plants and symbiotic fungi reward each other and punish each other, with what is essentially trade deals and embargoes. And in some experiments, fungi have withheld nutrients from stingy plants and strategically diverted phosphorus to resource-poor areas where they can demand high fees from desperate plants. So here's the paradox. Can the forest be both cooperative and competitive? Can it be both collective and individual? And so here we have as below this paradox. And so what do we have paradox in science of mind? Well, yes, we do. So I just want to give you some examples of some of the things that we talk about that are paradoxes. In order to receive, we must give. Has anyone ever heard that? In pledge time, where we could still use some pledge cards. Here's another one. We experience our true nature to the extent that we are aware of it. Our true nature is God, which is infinite. But we're not infinite, so we can never experience the totality of our true nature. Here's another one. that we're told and we're taught that there's a method to affirmative prayer, and yet as you get deeper into it, you find that affirmative prayer is not about the method. So the power does not come from the method. Another one is that all beings possess freedom of choice, yet few of us are actually free enough to choose. Another one is we release our word. That's what we're taught. When we're done with a prayer, we release our word, we let it go. It's in God, done. We don't have to worry about it. And we're also told to move our feet. So we got, okay, let it go, move your feet. So those are just some. I think there's a few more. There's a few around control I think we could find. Control and surrender. So let's take these into a form many of them may have experienced. One that I experienced a lot when I first came into Science of Mind was that one about in order to receive, I must give. And so I kept thinking, okay, well, if I give, then I've got to receive. So I need money, so therefore I'll give. But we can also come from a different place, which is I want to give more to the village, to the community that I love, and I have to make sure my bills are paid. I want to give more service, and I want to take care of myself and my life. Have you ever thought about how you want to live in the flow and the mystery, and at the same time you want your life to be orderly? Or that you want to say your word and release it, you want to do an affirmative prayer, and you also want to take action to make the word happen. So the question is, how do we deal with these paradoxes? And what are they? There's lots of them. So what are they doing to us? What are they all about? I got to make a decision here whether we're going to talk now. No, I think I'll leave it and I'll finish this and then we'll come back and we'll open it. So I found some stuff about how do we deal with paradox? Because we deal with it all the time in our life. Well, the first step is we need to have some awareness of it. So we have to understand that we're in the middle of a paradox. So if you're in a situation where you've got frustrations that are due to being torn between two competing demands, are you in the middle of a paradox? Are you aware of that? And are you expecting yourself to just be one-sided? Are you expecting yourself that you have to make a decision? So, for example, I certainly know people who have given so much service to the village that they burn out and then they leave forever. And we haven't seen them for a long time. And that's what happens when you're not able to reconcile that paradox. So where are the conflicting or competing demands that I'm unable to reconcile? And then the second step is about acceptance. Are you willing to accept the risks of being on one side of the paradox? Are you willing to give more money and just hope your bills get paid? Are you willing to not give money, to pay your bills, and then feel like you're missing out on something? So, and am I willing to embrace, and the last one is integration. So that's where it really comes together is, are you willing to integrate both of those things? Are you willing to say, instead of either or, either and, both and? So what I'd really like at this point for people to turn their cameras on, because I want to do an exercise and I want to be able to see you do it. So if you would turn your cameras on. And I'm going to go to gallery view here for just a second. So does everyone who's got their camera on, Do you understand? Did one of those paradoxes resonate with you? Is there any of those paradoxes that you've ever had to deal with, or that you're currently dealing with? Let me see a thumbs up if you have. Okay. So what I want you to do is Sherry can't turn her camera on. What I want you to do is I want you to put your hands out in front of you. And I want you to put one side of that paradox in one hand and the other side of the paradox in the other hand. Just hold it like that. Now what I want you to do is I want you to roll your shoulders back so you can really open your heart. And now what I want you to do is I want you to bring your hands, I want you to bring your hands slowly towards your heart and put one hand over the other. And imagine that both of those things have gone into your heart. And see what that feels like. Okay, so we're going to talk about that in a minute. But what happens when we're in the middle of a paradox, when we recognize it, is that we get a paradoxical tension. And just like what happened to me on my 50th birthday when I was lying back in the hot springs and I recognized that there was a paradox there. Well, I didn't have those words, but that's what I was doing. I moved out of my head and into my heart. So that when I got back in that boat and we were in this storm, I was in my heart. And so I was in a place of believing and accepting that that the universe was supporting me. My friend who was with me was totally freaked out. She was right in her head, shouldn't we be doing this? Shouldn't we be doing this? Shouldn't we be doing that? And so she was on the other side of the paradox. She hadn't integrated those two things. So I want to open it now, and I want to ask you, go back to what I started, which is what my teacher said, which is paradox is where God lives. So what does that mean to you, and what was it like for you to take both sides of those things and put them in your heart? So, is there anyone willing to?
Can you say the questions again, Constance?
Sure. So, what does it mean to you to say that the phrase paradox is where God lives? What does that mean to you? And then what was the experience like for you of taking those two sides of the paradox and moving them into your heart? And of course, anyone can talk about anything else around paradox they want to, because they will anyway. So, okay, so Alice.
When I think about God and paradox, to me what comes up is it's about trusting God. It's about realizing that there are these two opposing, what seem like contradictory things, but it's all about, for me, it just comes as trust. It seems like it might be confusing and in conflict, but when you're in your heart and you're connected with the one, then it doesn't, it's not in conflict anymore. And in the exercise, what I noticed was the conflict disappeared. And it felt so good to welcome both qualities in. Like it was like family, like everybody's welcome. And it was really nice feeling. Yeah, so thanks for that exercise. That was great.
You're welcome.
I think Bob had his hand up, and then Paul, and then Barbara.
No, go ahead. I kind of lost the thought, so go go ahead.
No problem. No problem. It happens all the time. Paul?
I'm a little kerfuffled, if that's a word, or flummoxed, or like BFO'd. BFO is meaning blinding flash of the obvious. Because Constance, until you made me do this, and then bring it together and all of that, for me, the word that came up was I had a reconciliation. And I didn't have two diametrically opposed concepts that I was bringing together. I was just dealing with the whole God is a paradox thing. But through that reconciliation, I'm going to read you the definition of reconciliation.
Okay.
If I may. It's a noun. The rest, because I had to look it up, because the feeling I had was reconciliation. And then I said to myself, what is reconciliation? It means to reconcile, to recognize something. Or I'm going to go to Webster to confirm my feeling in language. It's a noun. Excuse me. The restoration of friendly relations. The action of making one view or belief compatible with another. And finally, the action of making financial accounts consistent or harmonized. It resolved conflict for me. The exercise. I just wanted to share, which led me to a feeling of reconciliation. I'm going, what does reconciliation really mean? I know what it feels like, but what does it mean? And all three of those, I think you solved a huge problem in my life with, in the recognition that I could have two diametrically opposed ideas where there's a single thread of truth between them that join them. And I just have to harmonize them. And I'm going to use that a lot. So thank you. That's what I wanted to share.
Thank you, Paul.
Barbara?
Since I really enjoyed that exercise, and I think that having polarity is a very important topic, particularly with today's landscape, the polarization, the opposition that we see occurring. And I know for myself personally, when I'm come up against things that seem polarized within myself, I want this, but I want that, they seem in opposition. What's generally called for is viewing it from a different state of consciousness, from a higher state of consciousness, a transcendent. You transcend the opposition from a higher level of consciousness where both are true, and it can encompass both. So rather than them fighting against each other, they're both true, but it's a different vantage point, I guess I'd say, from a different transcendent state of consciousness. Now, how do you get there? That's the question. Often meditation. Sometimes, I find that with myself, I, wrestle with these things and then let it go. And then suddenly, bam, an insight comes where there's an inclusiveness and an encompassing viewpoint.
Yes. And something you said about, something else I read when I was preparing this is I read it was a Christian writer who was talking about faith and said that the opposite of faith, often in our belief, in the way we teach, we often pair faith and fear as the opposites. This writer was saying faith and certainty are the opposites. And I found that very, very interesting and very, very thought-provoking. And particularly with what's going on, because there's so much certainty among people who believe the conspiracy theories, that they're right, and so little trust and faith in our institutions. And I'm not quite sure what to say about the politicians, but it fits there somewhere. I'm not quite sure where, but but well, they play a game. They do something different. Anyone else?
I'd like to say something.
Freya, sure. Can you turn up your volume just a little bit?
Oh, I'll get closer. How about
There
that?
you go.
It's something unusual happened because I had a feeling in my heart area when you asked that question, and I brought my hands to my heart. I had this feeling, and it was kind of a mixed feeling, but there was an openness, but also something like a little bit difficult. It felt like not totally at peace, but my heart was open. And the unusual part is I don't remember feeling that before, except this very week. Like something happened this week where it was like I was kind of in total acceptance of life just as it was. I mean, some difficult things were happening that I did not like, but another part of me knew that life is perfect and wonderful. And so the two feelings were happening at the same time. And it was almost like I wish there was another word besides surrender, but I was just accepting, like I give up. In fact, I said that to my husband, I give up. And he said, oh, and it wasn't like a bad thing to give up my viewpoint and how, this was wrong or this was right. And it was very profound feeling that I had earlier. And then I had the same thing when you asked that question and we did that exercise. So thank you.
You're welcome. So Bob?
Yeah, I like the exercise, and but since I've been thinking about paradox, and I realize it comes up often enough, and usually the way I deal with it is try to get comfortable with it, and say that these are not opposite. I mean, they look like they're opposite, but they might be complementary. They might the apparent paradox. As long as I don't jump one way or another real quickly, they often find out that I often find out that they are complementary, or they're telling me which thing to do first, or how to order things. If I just take my time, it's going to work out where it's not a paradox. They're not antithetical. They're complementary. So that's how it comes up for me a lot of the time.
Judith?
Yeah, kind of piggybacking on what Bob said, I'm reminded of the yin yang symbol with the two, the black and the white, and each one has its opposite right in the center. And so it kind of represents the unity of the whole. In talking about the statement from your teacher that paradox is where God lives, is that what it was?
Yeah.
That's something that I'm just taking under consideration because it doesn't really resonate with me. I'm not sure I believe it, but I'm open to considering it and seeing where it lands. With the exercise, though, I loved the exercise, and what came up for me was in bringing the two things into my heart. I was reminded of the circulation in the body of breathing in oxygen, the arteries taking the oxygen throughout the body, and then the veins bringing the blood back to the heart to become reoxygenated. So what came up was a flow. that these two things are different, and
Mhm.
maybe they're opposites, but they're in a flow with each other, and they're actually part of a cycle.
Right.
And I just thought it was interesting that the actual function of the heart came up when I placed my hands on my heart.
Yeah.
I like the exercise. Thank you.
You're welcome. Well, it got me thinking about.
Margot has her hand up too, Constance.
Oh, sorry. Okay. Oh, go ahead, Margot.
Just a quick hop. I had a little reaction to the maybe kind of the absolute, and then I said, "Wait a minute, God is everywhere, right?" So there's a paradox. God's in the paradox, but God is in everything. So the choice, there's really no place in all those contradictions that God is not. You know, how you work out a practical thing like pay your bills or give to the church. I'm kind of with Bob. They work out when you pay your bills, you're circulating money into the universe too. But it is, God is not exclusively in a paradox, but is there for sure for you to get guidance to figure out what is true for you in any given moment, the freedom of choice, the freedom to have conscious awareness. I think the opportunity to dance with God is definitely in a paradox.
Right. Thank
Beautiful.
you. Yeah. Yeah, and that reminds me, Margot, because one of when I first came to Oakland Center, I was really in a paradox about the giving receiving. I really, and what the way it resolved for me was when I finally understood it at a different level. I was looking at it from a very effect level, you know, the effect of, okay, so if I give, then I need to get money in my bank account. I was being very literal about it. And it wasn't until I really, it was not very quick on my part, I have to tell you, but I finally one day, I heard someone else, Mary Morrissey, actually talking about the giving. Every time she gave, it was about reaffirming her trust and belief in God. So it had nothing to do with the bank account. And once I started giving from that point of view, the whole thing shifted for me. And in fact, the giving and receiving started to happen. The circulation started to happen. So, so it was really, it goes back to what Ernest Holmes says. He says, there's nothing mysterious in the truth so far as it is understood, but all things, of course, are mysterious until we understand them. So the paradoxes are there, even like in the forest floor, where we've got, you know, different scientists arguing about the theory of evolution.
Mm-hmm.
It's very possible that at some point that's going to move that theory forward so that both cooperation and competition exist at a different level. And I think I'm going to finish this. I want to read you this second verse of the Tao, because it's all about paradox. And under heaven all can see beauty as beauty only because there is ugliness. All can know good is good only because there is evil. Being and non-being produce each other. The difficult is born in the easy. Long is defined by short, the high by the low. Before and after go along with each other. So the sage lives openly with apparent duality and paradoxical unity. The sage can act without effort and teach without words. Nurturing things without possessing them, he works, but not for rewards. He competes, but not for results. When the work is done, it is forgotten, which is why it lasts forever.
Constance, where was that again?
That's the second verse of the Tao. I found it. It's in
I Ching.
Yeah, it's in the Ching, but I got it out of Wayne Dyer's book that where he talks about all the different verses and he writes about them. But
I'm going to look it up for myself later, but thank you for that.
You're welcome. The second verse of the Tao, yeah. So thank you. So Paul, Judith, do you
Unmute yourself, Judith.
I am. Judith Frownglass.
Judith, yeah,
Okay.
front glass.
Okay, thank you. I have a phrase from someone which fits in there, and I'm just trying to figure out everything that was said tonight and where this phrase fits in. And it came from my very dear friend, Che Norman, who used to run the bookstore many years ago. And she just said, it's a very visual thing that I carry around with me, which is when talking about, it was about relationships with people or something going on that I didn't like in my life. And she said, well, on the one hand, and she did it like this rather than to the heart, on the one hand, this is true. On the other hand, this is true at the very same time. And so as a visual, I've kept that with me for many years. And I want to see how that fits in. I'm going to think about how that fits into everything that you said today.
Mm-hmm.
Same time.
Yeah.
It's the both and instead of the either or.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I also think that one of the things it does is it helps us bypass our heads. So Kierkegaard, he says the ultimate paradox of thought is to want to discover something that thought itself cannot think. And so when we're dealing with a paradox where we can't think our way out of it, if we go to our heart, we can find the solution. Well, we don't find the solution, but the solution finds us.
Yeah.
So with that, Paul, I will turn it back to you.
I will accept the transition.
Okay.
Wow, everybody. Are you all as deep? I'm looking at the chat, Constance. I don't know if you want to take a look at the chat, but very complimentary and particularly around a rich, intimate, and informal discussion tonight. You really outdid yourself. Gave us another nugget. A nugget provider has joined us on Wednesday night to have us take something home, and it's almost like a master class, Constance. So thank you so much. Let's thank her through our clapping or visually or hands up.
And thank you for being here.
So much. Wow. I have to gather myself now because I'm going to be applying that all the time. So thank you, Constance. We have some great announcements that I want to get through. We have some exciting new stuff coming. The paradox of it all. So join me as I run through these, and I hope you find them informative. Barbara, you ready, darling? There we go. This Sunday, January 31st, is Practitioner Sunday. Now, on Practitioner Sunday, all the practitioners fill all the roles in the service, except for the Zoom team. Practitioners Christopher Brown, Chantel Rolfing, and Robin Rice Olmsted will be speaking on the weekly theme of looking above. Our meditation is at 10 and our service starts at 10:30. Then next Wednesday, February 3rd, Reverend Tony Bradford will start off Black History Month and our February theme of One Journey, Many Paths. One Journey, Many Paths. I got to write that down real quick. Thank you for waiting. Okay. And he's going to do that in the satsang style. And our meditation, as you know, is at 6:30 and services at 7. That being Black History Month is coming, we have a Black History Month organization team, and they created a full schedule of activities for February. First is a devotional with Dr. Dan. Dr. Dan Morgan was the founding minister of Guidance Church of Religious Science in Los Angeles and one of the early Afro-American science of mind thinkers and writers. Practitioner Emeritus Dodie Cheney Fernandez will be reading Monday through Friday at noon from his book, Guidance for a Spiritual Journey, followed by a short discussion and prayer. Take a half hour from your lunch to refresh your spiritual vision. This all starts on Monday, February 1st at noon, Monday through Friday for the month of February. And you can look on the events page on our website, and there's access information. Also coming is the Monday Village News will be full of interviews with congregants, information about Black History Month, and so much more. Make sure to put info@oaklandcsl.org in your contacts, and you won't miss an issue. Also, there's a grand lineup on Sunday and Wednesday with speakers focused on Black History Month. And finally, my grandmother's hand. Okay, I had trouble with this when I was reading it in preparation. Breathe. My grandmother's hands book group for white and white identified people will be taking place with practitioner Chantel Rolfing and Allison McKenzie, and that will start February 22nd. So watch your newsletter, watch for future announcement about all of these activities, but the first one that's starting is definitely the devotional with Dr. Dan and with our wonderful Dodie Cheney Fernandez, starting on February 1st. Can you imagine 5 days in a row, a chance to get to come to church? I think it's a great idea. Also, our Women's Spiritual Transformation Group is reconvening this Sunday, January 31st for 6 sessions. So sign up online under our events page. This is the last week to apply to be on the Board of Trustees. For more information, you can contact Deborah Jackson, or you can download an application from the homepage of the website. The application does detail a lot of what you may be wondering about. Our Facebook page has moved. We've been talking about it. It has now moved. We weren't able to live stream to our old page, so we've set up a new one that will allow us to do that. Our new page is facebook.com/spiritual living official. We now have 149 likes. After an initial enthusiastic response, our liking rate has slowed down. Please like the page and invite your friends. The more people who like our page, the more people will get our great posts. Oh, wait a minute. Here it comes. It's breaking news. Guess what? There's a new membership class that's going to start on February 20th. I don't have any details. I just know it's coming on February 20th. Those will follow in the upcoming Village News and Sunday announcements. So if you're thinking about becoming a member of the Oakland Center for Spiritual Living, that class is coming on February 20th. Breaking news. I love it. Next, I want you to know, as you already know, our website is always the center of everything that goes on in this digital church life that we're leading. oaklandcsl.org. Information Central. That's where we have everything. So how you can get to Wednesday and Sunday service, the events page, save the date events, registration for classes and workshop, everything is there. And Barbara's showing us the homepage where it all is right there. So you get, I think you all know pretty much about it. Also, we have a hot link. See those little yellow boxes in the IT world? Those are called hot links back in the day when it was new. It's a one-click access to another page. We have one for village Facebook groups, and we also have one for our own YouTube channel where you can see recorded Sunday and Wednesday services, special video messages from Reverend Jeff, and messages from our own community. And then the village Facebook group allows you to converse with other Facebook villagers. If you want to receive our weekly newsletter, on that homepage you see down at the bottom, if we were able to scroll down on the left, if you're not getting it now, just go to the bottom left-hand corner and there's an entry zone to put in your email address, and you can send that, press that button and it'll go right directly to Constance, and she'll get you on our village news mailing list. So with that in mind, that's our announcements. But the biggest announcement of the night is the Zoom team working behind the scenes. We have some new folks that joined us tonight, so I want to recognize their hard work. We have our true and steady Peggy is out there, but Barbara Vivino, Dr. Barbara Vivino tonight did PowerPoint first time. Yay, Barbara, you survived. Peter, you have a backup. Yay. Speaking of Peter, Peter was here. Alice Knutson, Alice Herndon, and Sam. And I know Sage is sneaking around in the back, and Zoe is supporting us in the background. That's our Zoom team, and they're just the best. So thank you guys so much. Without you, we couldn't be able to do that. And with that in mind, as we get close to closing out right now, I want to just take a minute and do an offering. Barbara, if you could show us the affirmation slide, that would be great. And if you would read along with me as soon as she shares that. It's coming up, but I'm going to pass the digital plate from Square. It's kind of like family squares here. So I'm passing the digital plate and I'm collecting your offering. I'm holding it close to my heart. And I'm knowing that what we give, we do receive. I know for a fact it has worked for me. We talked about it tonight, the mystery of all of how that works. I do believe that you should give 10% to your favorite charity. And the whole time I worked at AT&T, not only did I give 10% to the church, I gave 10% to my second favorite charity, my dry cleaning fund. And I benefited from that. So if you will, take your offering and repeat our new year, new start. This gift I give is God in action. It does good work in the world and blesses creation. Oh, amen to that. So I release our offering and let you know digitally you can donate by hitting the donate button there on the homepage. Or if you're smarter and younger like Zoe and all those other millenniums and all those Peggy's that know how to do things, and now Barbara knows how all these fancy new stuff. You can text an amount to 510-327-3431. I do the donate button. It only took me 5 years to get there, but you can also send a check the old-fashioned way. However it comes in, we're ever so grateful for what you share with us, and we're ever so grateful that you're here tonight. Again, Constance, thank you. Wonderful service, deep and meaningful. We bless you, darling, and I ask that you bless us with a closing prayer at this time.
I'd be glad to do that, Paul. So let's just take a deep breath. Whew, and let it out with a sigh. And how good it is to remember that infinite energy, that unending heart that is everywhere present, that is the only thing that's happening. that energy which is a bowl without a rim. It's a well with no bottom. It is all of that and so much more. And it is love. It is that unconditional love, that field of love that we all know in some part of our body, in some part of our soul. We know that, even if we're not experiencing it on the human plane. And so how good it is to know that that's who and what my life is. And how good it is to know that that's the life of everyone on this call. It's the life of everyone in our village. It is the life of everyone and everything on this planet. And it is the life of the planet. And I'm just so blessed for this time we've had together. I am so blessed for the heart and the commitment, the love, the dedication that shows up here every single Wednesday night. And I am so grateful for the time we've had together. I am so grateful for this time. And so I just know that that we're all safely home already, and that once we turn off the Zoom call, we go about our business and do what it is that we need to do, and we do it with joy and grace and ease. And that we stay connected, just like those those little filaments under the earth that connect all the trees and all the plants. That we have that going for us as well. We may not know exactly how it works, but we know it's there. And so I just let it go. And I say, and so it is.
And so it is.
So it is.